What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to another episode of Around the Berg. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, with my co-host, Shane Kubis. Shane, how you doing tonight?
I feel kind of weird because we're going to talk about really the main thing we want to talk about today with one of the big trades that happened recently with the Saints and the Eagles. That kind of makes me wonder how it might affect us here with the Steelers.
Yeah,
So
that's going to be pretty much our whole show because this is a
yeah,
pretty big trade. There isn't a lot else going on. We're kind of just waiting on free agency moves to happen.
hmm
I don't really know how much content we can squeeze out of Taco Charlton signing with the Saints. So,
not a lot, but
so we're
yeah,
just going to talk about this for a little while. So,
yeah,
yesterday the Saints traded a bunch of picks, a few later picks, and their first round next year
yeah,
to acquire the Eagles, one of the Eagles' first round picks at 16, and then they flipped 18 and 19. So now the Eagles pick 15th and 18th, and the Saints pick 16th and 19th. And what everybody seems to be assuming is that this trade is New Orleans making a move so that they have the draft capital to jump up and get a quarterback,
yeah,
which, based on the narratives of what's happening with the quarterbacks in this draft class, despite them being not the best prospects,
yeah.
it looks like the Steelers are going to be out of luck unless they want to trade up as well, but they really don't have the draft capital to do it.
No, and that's kind of what obviously a big trade like this, it's normally a precursor to a big move up the board for
Mm-hmm.
a quarterback or another premium position, right? So that's the thinking right now. Obviously, we'll have to see how that goes down on probably on draft day. Obviously, is when we'll be seeing whatever move they make next. But if that's what they are doing, then as much as there is one guy in particular that I'd love to be an option for us at this point in the class, if they're willing to make this much moves to go up and get him, then they can do that. Like that's just kind of where it is with
Mm-hmm.
that for me.
Yeah, and essentially, if you look at one of those trade value charts, these
Yeah.
two first round picks at 16 and 19 equate to about between picks 4 and 5 overall, which are the Jets and the Giants,
Right.
respectively. And either one is intriguing. I think we agree that the Giants is more intriguing for
Yes.
two reasons. One, the Giants also have another first round pick. They have a second first round pick, if you will, that is right behind the next pick. So right now they pick 5 and 7.
Yes.
So if they trade that fifth pick, they'll still have a pick at 7. The Jets also have a second first round pick, but it's at 10. So they have to wait a little longer, whereas the Giants only have to wait one more pick.
Right.
And the other part of it is that there's been a lot of talk about Carolina drafting a quarterback, especially Kenny
Yes.
Pickett.
Yeah, that's a big thing for sure.
Yeah. So, and based on what, I've been hearing, what I've seen on Twitter and everything, the Saints could be going either the Malik Willis or the Kenny Pickett route. Kenny Pickett fits a lot of what they've had at quarterback for the last few years. He's obviously bigger than Drew Brees, but he kind of has a similar play style. And with Willis, he's obviously very different. He's more in the Taysom Hill mold, honestly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he has been in for a visit recently. So, maybe the Saints just like fell in love with him or something.
Yeah, and I think that's very possible. But I assume that if they're willing to move up this far, I would hope that it's for a Willis because at least the upside is there. If
Mm-hmm.
nothing else, I still think it's a lot to do for any of the quarterbacks in this class. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to move, especially to 4 or 5, or whatever it ends up being,
Mm-hmm.
taking Willis would be the only way I could see it possibly working out long term with that much draft capital being moved.
Yeah, and like for them, like again, I don't really love trading up a lot of draft capital for any of these quarterbacks, but Pickett in New Orleans is a great fit just
It
because
is, yeah,
he'll have at least 10 games in a dome a year,
that's true. Yeah,
and 4 on top of that in warm weather stadiums, and then he might only need to play like one quote cold weather game a year.
true actual cold
Yeah,
weather game. Yeah,
which he has done at Pitt, but there's still that concern because
yeah, people still talking about
yeah,
that. Understandably.
it's funny. Like people like kind of poo poo on the whole hand size thing, but people have to remember that the NFL ball is bigger than the college ball.
Yeah, it's something that I think is in general in most cases is pretty overblown, but in his case because he's really on the fringe of what we've really
It's a
seen.
historic outlier.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. It's not even one of those things where it's like 9 inch. Like 9 inch hands is where people start talking about it
yeah.
sometimes. Like Burrow had, I think,
He
nine
has
inch hands,
9 1/4
whatever. Nine
something.
and a
Yeah,
quarter, whatever. Like when you're in that range, it's like I think it's kind of like whatever, unless you see it
yeah.
on film. With Pickett, there is understandable concerns with like whether or not that's going to translate and whether he's going
Yeah.
to have trouble with it. But again, I think that's if you're looking at that and focusing a lot on that, it's probably going to skew him a little bit more than it needs to.
Yeah.
But it would be a good idea, like if you are going to take him, especially in the first round, playing in a dome, like you said, or playing in warm weather is likely a better fit for him in general, anyway. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other aspect of this is that there's been some talk that Detroit is also interested in Malik Willis. They coached him at the
yes,
Senior Bowl, so they've been up close with him. They could take him at 2, which again, crazy considering
yeah, yeah,
Willis's flaws, but they still have Jared Goff, who,
yeah.
for all his warts, is a you know adequate.
He's starting caliber.
Exactly, yeah.
Like he's not gonna get just be so bad that you have
And
to
that
go to
and
Willis. You
that
know what I
team
mean?
was, I mean, they lost a lot of games, but that team was very competitive with him at
They were
quarterback.
honestly, yeah.
And they got him some better weapons. That offensive line has had another year to gel together. So, I can't imagine they'll be worse. So,
No, they should at least be. They're going to be a more complete team on offense, especially,
right.
which is really important for them in their run game
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah. And Detroit is interesting because they also have the last pick in the first round.
yeah,
So, and that pick is, it's very interesting to watch because it's the last pick that has the 5th year option
hmm
for picks. So, that's why teams will trade into the end of the first round so they can grab a quarterback or somebody they really want to get that extra year on. Um, but in terms of how this affects the Steelers, we'll kind of pivot back to that.
yeah,
At this point, it seems like there are at least 3, maybe even 5 teams that are in the top 10 that could be taking quarterbacks. So you have Detroit, you have uh, Carolina. There's some talk that Atlanta could take a quarterback. There's some
hmm
talk that Seattle could take a quarterback. And then you have the pending threat of New Orleans trading up into the top
yes,
10 to also draft a quarterback. So, and I think other than that, every other team before the Steelers is probably not interested in him, and the ones behind them are pretty much all established playoff teams, so they wouldn't do it either. So, I don't foresee a run where all 5 quarterbacks are gone,
no,
but the 2 that people are connecting the most to the Steelers in Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis, I think are all but gone now.
yeah. I don't see a scenario where we are going to be in position to stay where we are and get one of those two, and it was already probably unlikely anyway.
Yeah.
But with New Orleans there now, with the draft capital and the need to go up and get a guy,
Mhm.
any chance we may have had of being able to move up pretty significantly, I think, is gone because we're not going to have any sort of way to compete with what they have.
Yeah. And I don't, because this team is not, the roster is not perfect.
Mhm.
I don't think the team is going to be willing to trade future assets. When they still need I mean, they're trading for a quarterback, but they still need to, fill some holes on this roster. So I don't
Yeah,
think they're going to be mortgaging future assets, which is something they've been reluctant to do in the past, anyways.
yeah,
Um, and then there's the possibility that they could be interested in a guy like Desmond Ritter,
yeah.
who's getting some first round hype, and I think he could be gone, honestly.
It's possible. Yeah.
So, which I honestly like. I'm happy with this because I really didn't want them to use a first round pick on a quarterback.
That's kind of where I'm at too. Is like people who were in that camp, obviously, who are in that camp. There's a significant amount of people, of course,
Hmm.
because it just makes sense where we're at. I just feel like if a guy fell to us like a Willis or even maybe a Pickett, because it's just you're at the 20th pick at that point, he was projected higher. It's if you think he's going to be the guy, great. Outside of those two, and even some other guys, like I know you like Howell a lot. I actually wouldn't mind that either at this point, but it's just not. It's not going to be the best value you can get at that point.
Yeah,
There's no way that any of the guys that may have been a value are going to be there at this point.
yeah. And like I would love, and this is something that we did in our simulated mock draft
Yeah,
last week. This is something that I have been doing in a mock draft that I've been working on. I would love to see them trade back. And I don't think the trade back would involve a quarterback. I think it would involve a team like the Packers or
yeah,
Kansas City trading up to get a wide receiver,
hmm
especially because they would jump ahead of the Patriots by 1 pick. Or if it's the
yes,
Chiefs, they'd be jumping ahead of the Packers as well. So, a team that is wide receiver needy might want to jump up there. And the Steelers, even though they also need a wide receiver, they might be like, okay, we can trade back and maybe even still get our guy. And because this wide receiver class has, a pretty good set of dudes that are in that range of like the 20s and into like the maybe like till 40. There's a lot
yeah.
of
There's a lot
receivers
of
in that
guys there.
group that they could like. So maybe they trade down and you can still get maybe the guy who was like top of your board, like a Lewis C and a Daxton Hill or
Yep.
one of the wide receivers.
I could really see a scenario where, like you said, if a receiver like an Olave or Burks or whatever's there at 20, and a team really likes them
Yeah,
opposed to
Olave is the
whatever's
one,
left.
and right, the one I'm working on, I have the Chiefs trading up to get Olave at
Right,
28. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So someone like that, if they're there and the Steelers don't think they're going to be an impact enough to just stay and take them, you move back to, like you said, 28 or 29, whatever picks. I think 29 and 30 for the
yep,
Chiefs is what they
hmm
have. You're probably going to be able to get, like, if they really like. It might be a little bit early just because of the injury concerns, but I know they really like Pickens. If you like
hmm
him there, get him on a 5-year deal then with the 5th-year option, but you don't have to take him as early. You get some extra picks,
yeah,
stuff like that. I could see them doing that and still getting a receiver like that they really like you said.
yep. I mean, I just love George Pickens because he's just willing to throw his hands
Yeah, he just
whenever.
he's
Like getting kicked out of the Georgia Tech game as a freshman for fighting was elite stuff.
he's got the physicality down. I can't really say anything negative about
Yeah,
that
they
part of his game,
need to
but
bring in bring Heinz Ward back to be like the
right,
wide receiver
seriously.
coach.
Yeah, I mean
That'd be a
he's in
lethal
coaching, so
combination.
why not? Yeah,
Um,
but
yeah. So this will be a little bit of a tangent, but let's say like all the wide receivers, let's say minus Jameson Williams, because I think that would be a no brainer. But let's say the
yeah, you
rest of them
gotta.
are
Yeah.
let's say the rest of them are available at 21 and the Steelers stay. Who would you want to see them pick of Traylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, let's say Drake London, and is there another one I'm forgetting? Burks,
Uh,
Olave, Wilson,
London, you said already.
London.
I can't. I know there's another one. I
There
can't
is
think of
one.
it.
Um,
Losing my mind.
yeah, this is the thing. All these names just start to run together. No, that's those
Those
five
well,
guys.
those are the four like
Yeah, those are the four guys
primary
that would.
first
Yeah,
round guys. Yeah.
yeah. So of those four,
I mean,
uh,
Wilson's my number one receiver,
okay,
so I probably him. But then again, like we probably, as far as fit as the best guy that's going to fit as number two receiver right away, I think is Olave. I think he walks right in as number two receiver
yeah,
for any team that really needs one. So if that's the route you want to go, I'm fine with that too.
hmm
But like, I don't want one of these like bigger body guys right now just
yeah,
because Claypool's already on the roster and I want to
hmm
see him work out in some capacities that role.
yeah,
Um, yeah, with London, like I feel like he needs a quarterback that's really willing to give him chances, but also good chances, not just throwing it up to him all the time
yeah,
for him to be effective. I don't like that situation with us right
hmm
now. Burks is interesting because he can do a lot of different things, and I think it'd be fun. But I don't know if he would necessarily fill the role I want him to fill on the team.
yeah.
So
Him,
it's
Matt. He'd be an interesting tool for Matt Canada,
yeah, but
but I'm
yeah,
not sure the rest of the team is ready for that kind of.
that's what I'm saying. Like it's
Yeah,
not. We kind of need. I think we really need a legitimate number two caliber receiver right from the get go who
this
can play
is
outside. That's
this
what
is
I'm looking
when
for.
Marty McFly finishes Johnny Be Good,
Right.
and he's like, I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are gonna love it."
Right. Like I think Burks is going to be one of the most exciting guys, but I just don't like I said. I don't think he's the right fit right now for us.
Yeah,
Probably.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think
So
I also like Olave the best. I think Wilson would be a very good fit though as well.
yeah,
So
I
I have
like
those
either
two.
one of those. I mean, I
Yeah,
like so Wilson is my number one receiver, so I'd go with
yeah.
him in that situation. But one of the two Ohio State guys, though, for sure.
hmm So again, I think we kind of expect them to trade down. If they traded down, I'm trying to debate whether I would be. I think I would still be good with them taking quarterback in the first week just to get that 5th year option
Yeah, there's a guy I
because
still really like.
yeah,
I
because
just
with trading with either like Green Bay or Kansas City, they'd get at least. I think for Kansas City, they get 2 third-round picks basically that are
yeah.
at the end of the round.
Mhm.
With Green Bay, it's a little tougher because they have 2, and I'm not sure. I feel like if they just wanted to jump up 2 picks, they might only get like a 4th round back. So that
Yeah.
might be nice because you're just dropping back 2 picks and you're gonna feel good about getting the quarterback you want.
Right. Yeah.
So I'd be fine with that. But in terms of the second round, I don't know if any of the rest of the quarterbacks, Ritter, Howell, or Corral would fall to them at their pick as present, which is 52.
Yeah, I have a hard time thinking because at some point, if all of them file the first round, which I think is definitely possible. I don't know if it's likely, but it's
Yeah,
possible.
because I think
Yeah,
if I don't think Ritter does because
he's just getting a lot of
he's one of the
hype.
more pro ready guys.
Yes, right.
So I think some team like Seattle might want to jump back into the first and get him. Detroit obviously rare. If they don't take a quarterback early, they could take him at 32, and then he could
Yeah,
compete with Goff.
I had them actually in the mock I just did. I posted on Twitter a couple days ago. I had them taking Hal with that pick at 32.
Okay, yeah,
So like
same.
I think that that's very possible
hmm
that they could do that, opposed to taking Willis at 2, taking a guy they think could be a better player than Goff and hope that he is, and then if it doesn't work out, it was the last pick in the first round.
Yeah.
So it's less of a risk then. You get a premium player at the number 2 pick then still.
Yeah, and then I just don't know if any of those guys would fall to them in second because,
Yeah.
like I said, let's say, the teams at the top in the top 10, like not all of them take quarterbacks, but then you still have teams like Seattle and Atlanta that, kind of need a quarterback,
Mhm.
maybe, and they could take those guys that are a little more risky and let them sit, like your Sam Howells and your Matt Corrals. And I
Right.
think for both of those guys, the Steelers have seemed very interested in them. Kevin Colbert has been at like every Sam Howell watching opportunity that was
He
possible,
has, yeah, which
and they seemed very interested in Matt Corral at his pro day,
yeah.
which I don't really think either of them fit what the Steelers have traditionally had in a quarterback. It seems like
No.
they're shifting that lens a little bit, but I
Yes.
still think it's a little too far afield because of those guys did not run pro style offenses in college whatsoever.
No.
They're super RPO heavy, and they both need a lot of work, and they're both smaller guys. Powell's is more thick, but Corral's just tiny. Period.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, Matt, again, I'm not a big fan of him at all. I think you know that.
yeah,
I wouldn't take him in the first, maybe the second, even if I still would probably say no on that. But Hal would be the guy that if he fell far enough, I could understand them making that selection, seeing if he can develop behind Trubisky for a year and maybe get acclimated and be more like the guy in 2020 than
mhm,
2021. So
yeah,
it it's just hard. I feel like once you're at pick 20 and the guys that were expected to go are gone, I think you just need to punt on it for this year, personally. I
I
think we
agree.
both kind of agree there, but it just feels like that's not what's gonna happen, and I wish
Yeah,
it didn't feel that way, honestly. Like, this is kinda where it's going, it feels like.
to return to like the smokescreen thing.
Yeah.
I think that they were smart to go to all of these quarterbacks pro
Yes.
days.
Yeah.
Um, just so it seems like they could really take any of them. I think in my heart of hearts, honestly, I think that their order is Willis then Ritter. I really don't think I get they've been with Pickett for the longest, obviously being in the same building, but I really think they'll like what Ritter brings because of his running. And granted, like Pickett's a good athlete too, but Ritter brings a better running ability. He has more arm strength. So I don't know. I just think they would like either of those guys. How would you feel about trading up in the second staying in the second round though
Right.
to get one of those three that maybe falls into the second?
Hal would be the only guy I'd feel comfortable doing it with because, again,
Okay.
I like him better than the other 2 that might be there, Ritter and Kra. I like him more than both of them. But even then, I think at that point, once you're in the second round, if he doesn't fall to you, it's just not worth giving up capital to move up in the second round. It's only a 4-year contract. You're not getting that fifth year option benefit, which is really the biggest reason I think to trade up in the first round, obviously, to get one of
Mhm.
these guys. But outside of doing that, I feel like you're just throwing a couple extra picks away to maybe get a guy that could be good, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah, in the mock I was working on, I had them trade up about 12, 13-ish picks to jump ahead of Seattle to take Ritter, and
Mhm.
it only took giving up their original third round pick because in the first round they traded back and got 2/3 from Kansas
Right.
City.
Yes, you
So
had extra
yeah,
picks. Yeah.
so
If you
that one,
move back, it might make more sense because you'll have extra picks to use then. But
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, I was saying if they're just sitting there if they sit there in the first, I don't want them to trade up to get him in the
No, it's
second at
just
all.
you don't have enough assets
Yeah.
to be giving up picks
Yes,
right now. Yeah.
exactly. The other thing, and this is kind of we'll kind of move on past the first round guys because this quarterback class is very not evenly dispersed. But
No.
they seem to be interested. There could be the wild card option where they kind of wait until the very end of day 3 to take a guy because I think they have a pick that's like very at the end.
Yeah, I think there's a pick within like the last 10 picks or so, I think, right? Something like that.
241 out of 262, so in the
Oh,
last
so 20
20.
picks.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was even
But
farther. Yeah.
because like I said, like there aren't like a lot of great developmental options to take in the late rounds, but those seventh round picks, teams kind of just they're almost like the MLB draft picks, like they kind of
Yeah.
just throw darts.
Or like
Um,
draft a kid that was the son of a former player,
yeah,
stuff like that. Yeah.
exactly,
That's an interesting one to
exactly.
do. Yeah.
So, you know, so there's these like end of the draft guys, and I think so. They recently brought in Chris Oladokin from
Yeah.
South Dakota State for a visit, and I don't think he would get drafted, but
No, I don't think so.
Steelers wanted to like because with quarterbacks, there's obviously fewer of them. So if you want to make sure you get him,
You
if you
bring
take him
him
at
in talking about it.
241,
Yeah.
yeah, if you take him at 241, I'm not going to be too upset, especially if you haven't taken a quarterback earlier.
Yeah, it's at that point, you're like you said, you're just taking a flyer. If you really like a guy enough, it doesn't really matter at that point whether he'd be drafted or not. You at least don't have to. fight with other teams in case there's other
Yeah.
guys interested in them. So
Yeah. And like honestly, like even some of the other like there's a few names that I like in that area, like even as UDFAs, and they've said that they are going to use the draft to bring in a quarterback. Maybe they just actually tricked everybody and they waited until the very
that
end.
would be hilarious. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, because like if they brought in a guy that like I said, like Chris Odokin UDFA, or draft a guy like Chase Garbers or just Dustin Crum, one of these smaller school guys who, you know, would obviously be a backup, but maybe it could beat out Haskins for a roster spot,
Honestly, I
which would
think
be
that
sad.
at the very least, I think that if you bring in a guy like that, you hope that he develops into a long-term backup for
Yeah.
whoever the guy is going to end up being. Which that's really something. Getting a guy especially if you draft him on a 4-year contract, just to have him
Hmm.
is really nice to have just for roster building purposes because you don't have to worry about like if you really don't know for sure if you trust your starter and you want to go and get a backup that's actually making good money, that's a chunk of money that you can't spend on something else. So getting a guy that might be able to develop into a backup would be nice to do.
Yeah, and I think Oladokin like kind of gives you the different athletic profile that
Right.
um, not a lot of other quarterbacks would. So, um, anything else we want to touch on the quarterback situation now, or at least kind of their strategy for how they're approaching this?
I don't know. I mean, it's just like I said, it feels like, and I want it to not be the case, but it does feel like they are kind of determined to take a quarterback. I just hope that it is because they really like a lot of these guys and not just because they're what's left. Like
Hmm.
if they really like one of these guys, it's with quarterbacks especially, if you really like somebody, even if I don't understand it, if you're a team that does that, I can at least understand your reasoning for it if you really like that player, if you think he's the guy. I just don't think that the guy that they think is that guy for them is going to be there for them. So I hope they don't just take somebody just because. And I don't think they will, hopefully.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, that happened once with Artie Burns,
Yes.
and then with William Jackson getting sniped right before them. But
Yeah.
like, if somehow like Najee Harris had been taken before the Steelers last year, I don't think they would have taken ETN.
No, I don't think it would have been the same situation as what I'm worried
And, like, I
about
don't think
here.
they would have taken Javonte Williams in the first.
No, I
So,
think they would have been hopefully looking to get him in the second. Obviously, the Broncos took him early in the second, but
yeah.
that's probably what they would have been hoping for is that they could get somebody in the second at that point.
Yeah,
But
I think that they really did try to do their due diligence on the quarterbacks this year, and I think that I think and hope that their thought process is, we have all the information possible, we did all of the homework that we could, and, at the end of the day, maybe they decide, "Okay, like, none of these guys really measure up to what we want or need right now in terms of the stage of how this team is being built."
yeah,
And the stage in, this being like the first stage in the post Ben Roethlisberger era.
yeah. Hmm.
So I really hope I it's tough because I don't really want them to take Willis because I still think that he is too much of a project at this point, and like I get the upside and his upside fits what the NFL is going for with his quarterbacks now, but I just don't really feel like investing in that right now.
Yeah, it's one of the I think the thing that's exacerbating this for us is like this is the first time we've really had to have this conversation,
Hmm.
right? And it does make it makes you really want to sit down and really overanalyze and like look at things very hard because you don't want to get it wrong right
Hmm.
off the bat, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of why they've done this much homework on this is
Hmm.
they know how big of a decision this ultimately is going to be.
Hmm.
And if they get it wrong, hopefully it won't be something that they're tied to or that they have to deal with for super long, but getting it wrong would really sting coming off of losing Ben. So I think if they are smart, like I said, they're gonna make sure it's their guy that they take, and if that isn't their guy, then they just go best player available or whatever the situation might be. Maybe you do trade back, like you said too. As long as they do that, I think they can't really go super wrong. Obviously, outside of just drafting somebody that never does anything, but I'd rather take a chance on a player that's actually worth the draft value than just reach for a quarterback just
Yeah.
because you're
Oh,
trying to find
100%.
somebody.
Do,
So, yeah.
how do you think that this being Kevin Colbert's final draft effect? What way do you think that pushes their decision making?
I like to think it doesn't affect it that much just because it doesn't really feel like something that would affect them that much,
Okay.
just the way they do business. I feel like Colbert wants to obviously go out with a bang, but I think he wants to do it in a way that makes sense and not just make the flashy pick or take
Hmm.
the quarterback and hope that you're right and you can say that you were tired giving us another quarterback. I don't think he is that I don't think he's trying to do that. He's not
No,
going to
I
do it
agree.
selfishly. Like if there is a guy that again, if whoever the guy is, even if it's Ritter or Corral or whatever the case is. If that's your guy, if you did all the homework on these guys and that's your favorite one and he's there for you, then go ahead. If that's what you think is right. But if it's not that situation, I just don't want to hear later like, oh well, we had these guys ahead of them, but we also like this. Like, I just don't want to hear stories about that.
Yeah, I feel like that wouldn't be the case. Like, I
Right,
think,
exactly.
this team is obviously very well aligned in terms of the
Yeah,
vision going from the owners to the GM to the head coach. Like,
yeah.
I think that they all will be on the same page come draft time, and hopefully it matches up with what we want.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the thing that's really tough for me is like when I'm trying to do mocks and stuff is like that gaping hole at safety that I don't know is going to be
Hmm.
filled before the draft. Like,
Yeah,
I don't see this team going into the draft not knowing who their starting safety is going to be.
especially given that they have used free agency to plug a lot of
Yes,
very necessary holes. They've been, going into a draft, the last time they went into a draft with a gaping need at a position, it was corner,
yes,
and
and that was the Artie Burns.
that was the Artie Burns year,
Yeah,
exactly.
we don't want to repeat that. And I like the
Yeah.
safeties more at that range than I would have liked Burns at the time, but still, it's like I don't want them to have that hole just because I feel like they're gonna probably force a pick to fill it if they need to. But at the same time, I like some of the safeties that might be in that range. It's just not where I'd rather spend my first
I
round
mean,
pick if I'm the Steelers.
the way things are progressing, Kyle Hamilton's falling to 20.
If he falls then yeah, run the pick in. I don't care. That's
Yeah.
fine then. Even like I really like Daxton Hill. I don't think he's a perfect fit with Minka just because I think you'd rather have a
Any of
better
them,
like actual
any of them will work.
box safety. But at the very least, like if you're not confident you're going to get Edmonds back or Matthew, obviously still being talked about,
Hmm.
then yeah, you probably should or at least consider at 20 a safety, especially if one of those top guys are there still. But
Yeah, and I think they will be.
yeah, Hamilton, that whole conversation with him is just so weird.
It's too much time. It
Yeah,
The time
this
breeds
is what happened.
overthink.
This is what
Yeah,
happened.
it's happening. It's happening with
Thibodeau, yeah,
Thibodeau. It happened with Sewell the other year.
yeah, the
It
soul. I'm
happens
like,
every year.
okay,
Yeah, the guy whoever has been like the top guy, they get knocked down a peg.
it's
Especially as,
just
as time goes
it's
on and
just
on.
weird. Like
Yeah.
just the fact that like a 40 time has been the catalyst. It feels like for a
And
lot of
I don't
this.
know if you saw this tweet that at the video, but it was like
He's
looking.
like running like side to
Yeah,
side
it
for
like
half of
was
it. It's
looking
so
down
weird.
at him during his 40, like looking
Yeah,
at his face during his 40, and when in the combine, and when he
he almost
got off
ran
his
out of the
start,
whole
he like
thing.
weaved really hard to the one side and then got back, and like that's obviously gonna affect his time. And like I think I was saying this to you when that happened was that like his other drills seemed okay. Like his jumps were good, but his other drills were not as good. And I think it might have just been him still getting like he's not maybe not fully comfortable like doing an extended thing that requires a lot of repeated pressure on his knee, the
Right, and that's
40
very
or the
possible. And
yeah.
like,
So like that might have just been the thing that slowed him down, and then
yeah,
his pro day wasn't much better.
his
So
his his athletic score is still fantastic
oh
overall
yeah,
too.
exactly.
Which
Yeah.
is the funny thing. I don't think there's no way, like looking at the way he did that stuff for the combine, the drills, there was no way he could possibly be he at least wasn't 100% prepared. Whether
Hmm.
he's fully healthy or not, you can debate, but he at least definitely was not as prepared as some of the other guys who really showed up.
Hmm.
And like at the end of the day, like his 40 time doesn't matter at all to me,
Hmm.
obviously. Like it wasn't going to matter much anyway, unless there's something like actually catastrophic. And I was like, okay, something's not right. But you watch him play. There's no way you should have concerns over what role is likely going to be playing in the NFL. It's just not
Yeah.
going to be something you have to worry about. There's tons of safeties that run in his range that are all pro players,
Hmm.
and he's 6'4", 220 pounds.
Yeah.
Like it's honestly that 40 time wouldn't be bad if he wasn't considered the very best safety in the class and the top 3
Yeah.
talent in the class.
Exactly.
That's the only reason it's even being talked about.
Yeah.
And I honestly like. Do you think there's a chance? Maybe he knew he wasn't ready, but he did anyway, hoping he wouldn't get picked super high by one of these bad
No.
teams or
No.
something.
No.
That'd be hilarious.
No.
What if? How funny would that be though? If he was like, I'm a safety, I might not get taken that high anyway, but if I don't
No.
do great,
I don't
that'd
think
be,
I don't think he
that'd be
would go
awesome.
that galaxy brain.
No, but that would be if that came out.
That
How
would be
funny would that be?
insane.
Because then he's like,
No.
I duped everybody. You can't get out of
No,
here.
no, because then you lose money, and these guys are
That's
not going to do.
true. That's true. But I just think it's. I mean, that would be such a funny story if that came out. It's like,
Like
yeah,
if
I didn't
Laramie
want to go.
Tunsil like posted the gas
Right,
mask
exactly,
video
that
so
type
he
of
didn't
thing.
have to
Yeah.
go to whatever team was picking in the no,
Right.
because
It'd be so
that
funny.
messes up your money, and that's
It's
the one
true.
thing
Yeah.
these guys aren't going to do.
That's fair. Yeah, I just thought it'd be funny. I'm
No,
like, that's
that's
great.
fair. All right, that'll do it for us this week. Make sure you're following Around the Block on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, which we've been broadcasting on. Follow us on our Twitter accounts
Yep.
at Mitchell T. Wolf, WLFE, at Shane Kubis, as the name says in the video.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to have you back next time.